My mom died 2 weeks ago. I lost the meaning of life, so I sent a resignation letter to the VP of HR. I got a reply soon. Your mom's death is an excuse. Don't expect any kindness or compassion from me. You're fired. I cried. 5 minutes later, I received an angry call from my manager. What did? The email notification made a soft chime. I was sitting in the parking lot of a Wendy's, engine off, staring at the wrapper from a chicken sandwich I hadn't been able to finish. 2 bites. That's all I could manage before my throat closed up again. I opened it without thinking. Corporate email. Subject line, RE, resignation notice. Ms. Chen. I've reviewed your letter. Let me be direct with you, I don't have patience for dramatic exits. Your mother's death, while unfortunate, is not a valid excuse to abandon your responsibilities mid-quarter. We've all dealt with loss. We move forward. That's what professionals do. Don't expect any kindness or compassion from me on this matter. You've shown a complete lack of commitment to this organization, and frankly, your attempt to frame this as a mental health issue is transparent and manipulative. Consider your resignation accepted effective immediately. Actually, no, let me be clearer. You're fired. Don't bother coming in Monday. HR will mail your personal effects. Sincerely, Patricia Holbrook, Vice President, Human Resources, Meridian Solutions Group. I read it 3 times. Then I read it again. The Wendy's wrapper slid off my lap onto the floor mat. I didn't pick it up. My hands were shaking in a way I hadn't felt since the hospital, since the machines stopped making their rhythmic sounds and the room got so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. I cried. Not the dignified kind. The ugly kind. The kind where your whole face contorts and you make sounds that don't seem human and you don't care because there's no one around to see you anyway. My forehead pressed against the steering wheel, and I just let it come. All of it. 2 weeks of holding it together for the funeral arrangements, for the lawyers, for the endless paperwork that apparently accompanies a person's death like some bureaucratic shadow. 2 weeks of people asking if I was okay while clearly hoping I'd say yes so they could move on with their day. And now this. Your mother's death, while unfortunate. While unfortunate. Like I'd reported a flat tire. Like I'd mentioned my flight was delayed. The phone rang. I almost didn't answer. The screen said David Park, work, and I thought about letting it go to voicemail, letting everything go to voicemail forever, maybe driving to the ocean and just sitting there until the world made sense again. But I answered. Habit, I guess. Jenny. David's voice was strange, tight. Jenny, what the hell happened? Did Patricia actually send you something? What did she say? I couldn't form words right away. Just breathing. Ragged, wet breathing. Jenny, talk to me. She fired me. My voice came out broken, barely recognizable. She said my mom dying was an excuse. That I was being manipulative. Silence on the other end. Then David said something I'd never heard him say in the 4 years I'd worked under him. That fucking idiot. I should probably explain how we got here. My name is Jennifer Chen, and 3 years ago, I was just another mid-level analyst at Meridian Solutions Group. The kind of employee who shows up, does good work, doesn't make waves. I wasn't trying to climb any ladders. I wasn't networking at happy hours or positioning myself for promotions. I just liked the work. Data analysis. Finding patterns. Making sense of chaos. My mother, on the other hand, was anything but mid-level. Wang Weilin, though most Americans knew her as Linda Wang, founded Meridian Solutions Group in 1987 with $30,000 and a rented office above a dry cleaner in San Jose. She built it into a $200 million consulting firm over the next 35 years. She took it public in 2004, kept majority control, and ran it with a kind of quiet authority that didn't need to announce itself. She was also dying of pancreatic cancer for the last 18 months, which is something only a handful of people at the company knew. Not Patricia Holbrook, apparently. See, my mom had this thing about me. She wanted me to make my own way. When I graduated from Stanford with my MBA, she sat me down in her garden, the one with the koi pond she'd spent 20 years perfecting, and told me I could work anywhere I wanted. Any company in the world. She'd make a call. Open a door. I told her I wanted to work at Meridian. She laughed. Actually laughed. You want to work for your mother? No, I said. I want to work for a good company. I just happen to know one. We made a deal that night. I would apply through normal channels, use my married name, Chen, for my brief and unfortunate marriage to a man named Robert who lasted exactly 14 months before he decided he preferred his CrossFit instructor, and she would never, ever intervene on my behalf. No special treatment. No fast tracks. No one would know I was her daughter unless I chose to tell them. It worked beautifully for 3 years. I got hired as a junior analyst. I earned my promotions. I made friends who had no idea my mother was signing their paychecks. David Park became my manager, and he was tough, demanding, exactly what I needed. He pushed me hard and I pushed back, and somewhere along the way we developed the kind of professional respect that doesn't need constant validation. My mother watched from a distance. We had dinner every Sunday, and she'd ask about my work without ever letting on that she already knew everything: the quarterly numbers, the client wins, the internal politics. She'd just smile and nod and ask me how I was handling the Pearson account like she hadn't read the full report 3 days earlier. Those dinners stopped 18 months ago. That's when the diagnosis came. Stage 4, inoperable. The doctors gave her a year, and she made it almost to the wire, stubborn as ever. The funeral was last week, Thursday. It rained, which felt too on the nose, too much like a movie. I stood at the grave in a black dress that didn't fit right because I'd lost 12 pounds in the past 2 months without trying, and I watched them lower my mother into the ground, and I felt something inside me just stop. That's when I wrote the resignation letter. David Park pulled into the Wendy's parking lot 40 minutes after our phone call. He tracked my location through the Find My app we'd set up during a work trip to Houston 2 years ago, back when we kept getting separated in the convention center. I'd forgotten it was even active. He got out of his car, a sensible gray Honda that always smelled faintly of his daughter's soccer cleats, and walked over to my window. I was still sitting there. Still hadn't moved except to wipe my face with fast food napkins that left little paper fibers on my cheeks. David just stood there for a moment. Then he said, "Unlock the door." I did. He walked around, got in the passenger seat, and didn't say anything for a long time. We sat there together, watching the drive-through line move. A woman in a minivan ordered something complicated with extra modifications. The teenager at the window looked exhausted. "Jenny," David finally said, "do you know what Patricia did?" "She fired me." "Yeah." He rubbed his face with both hands, a gesture I'd seen him make during particularly stressful board presentations. "Jenny, she sent that email to all of HR leadership. CC'd the whole senior team. Some kind of, I don't know, making an example out of you. This is how we handle people who try to use personal tragedy as leverage. That kind of thing." I turned to look at him. "She CC'd people?" "Everyone. The CEO, the CFO, department heads. She wanted everyone to see her being tough." Something cold moved through my chest. Not anger, exactly. Something quieter. Something older. "David, yeah. Does Patricia know who my mother was?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I don't think so." His voice was careful now. "Jenny, I didn't even know until last year, when your mom asked me to look out for you without telling you she'd asked. She was planning ahead. Making sure you'd have someone in your corner when she was gone." I closed my eyes. "Mom, you manipulative, wonderful woman. So Patricia doesn't know." "No. And she sure as hell doesn't know that Linda's shares, 62% controlling interest in Meridian Solutions Group, transferred to a private trust upon her death." David turned to face me fully. "A trust whose sole beneficiary is listed as J. Whalen Chen. Which is you, Jenny. Which makes you, as of 9 days ago, the majority owner of this company." The Wendy's drive-through speaker crackled. Someone ordered a Frosty. "I just wanted to resign," I said quietly. "I just wanted to stop. I can't do anything right now, David. I can't think straight. I can't eat. I haven't slept more than 3 hours a night in 2 weeks. I wrote that letter because I needed to step away before I started making mistakes. Before I let people down. I know. I wasn't trying to leverage anything. I wasn't asking for special treatment. My voice cracked. I just needed some time. That's all I wanted. Some time to figure out how to live in a world where she's not in it." David reached over and put his hand on my shoulder. It was awkward. David wasn't a hugger, wasn't a toucher, kept professional distance like it was a religion, but he did it anyway. "I know," he said again. "I know that's all you wanted." I drove home that night and sat in my mother's garden. Not my garden. I couldn't think of it as mine yet. The house had been transferred to me too, along with everything else: the shares, the properties, the accounts, the collections of jade figurines she'd accumulated over 50 years. All of it, an entire life compressed into legal documents and asset transfers. The koi were still there, swimming their endless circuits. Orange and white, and one beautiful black one my mother had named Midnight, even though she'd always claimed naming fish was sentimental and foolish. I sat on the stone bench she'd had imported from Suzhou, the one she claimed was 200 years old, though I suspected she'd bought it at a garden center in Fremont and invented the story to make it more interesting. And I thought about Patricia Holbrook. I'd met her exactly twice. Once during my initial hiring, a brief handshake and a form signature. Once more at a company-wide meeting where she'd given a presentation about updated harassment policies. Both times, she'd looked right through me. I was nobody to her. Just another body in a chair, another name on a spreadsheet. She had no way of knowing who I was. But here's the thing, she also had no way of knowing who anyone was. That email she sent me, that cruel, dismissive, performative email, that's who she was. Not just to me. To everyone who came to her office vulnerable, grieving, broken. To everyone who asked for compassion and received contempt instead. My mother built Meridian on a simple principle: take care of the people who take care of the work. She paid well, she offered real benefits, she created a culture where you could admit you were struggling without fear of punishment. Not because she was soft, she was anything but soft, but because she understood that humans aren't machines. They break. They need repair. They need rest. Patricia Holbrook had been systematically dismantling that culture for the past 3 years. I knew because I'd heard the whispers. The denied bereavement leave. The suggestions that people use vacation days instead of sick time. The quiet retaliation against anyone who complained. She'd been building a little empire of fear inside HR, and no one had stopped her because she was good at her job, good at the parts that showed up on spreadsheets, anyway. My mother hadn't stopped her because my mother had been dying. And I hadn't stopped her because I hadn't known. But I knew now. The emergency board meeting was called for the following Tuesday. I didn't call it. Marcus Webb, the CEO my mother had appointed 8 years ago, called it after he received Patricia's email. Marcus was a careful man, the kind who read every document twice and never sent an email without sleeping on it. He was also one of the few people at the company who knew the full picture. He'd called me Sunday night, his voice strained with something between panic and fury. "Jenny, I need you to tell me that email isn't real." "It's real." "Christ." I heard him pacing, his footsteps echoing on what sounded like hardwood. "Christ, Jenny. I am so sorry. I had no idea Patricia would, I never would have let her." "I know, Marcus. Your mother trusted me to run this company, and I let this happen under my watch." "Marcus." I cut him off gently. "You didn't let anything happen. Patricia did this. Not you." "But I should have known. Should have seen the kind of person she was." I thought about that for a moment. About all the small signs that had been there, if anyone had been looking. The unusually high turnover in her department. The employees who transferred out rather than deal with her. The way she talked about consequences and accountability like they were weapons rather than tools. "Maybe," I said. "But that's something we can fix." The silence on his end stretched long. "What do you want to do, Jenny?" I looked out at the garden, at the koi swimming their endless circles, at the bench my mother had lied about for 20 years. "I want to come to the board meeting," I said. "And I want you to make sure Patricia is there." The boardroom at Meridian headquarters was designed to intimidate. My mother had commissioned it specifically for that purpose. The long mahogany table, the high ceilings, the windows that looked out over the Silicon Valley sprawl like a reminder of everything you could lose. I'd been in this room exactly once before, as a junior analyst presenting quarterly figures to a group of executives who barely acknowledged my existence. I'd been so nervous I'd mispronounced fiscal 3 times. Now I sat at the head of the table. Patricia Holbrook sat at the opposite end, and I could tell from her expression that she still didn't understand what was happening. She kept looking at Marcus, at the other board members, trying to read the room. Her usual confidence was there, but there was something underneath it now. A flicker of uncertainty. "I don't understand why this meeting was called," she said finally. "If this is about the Chen termination, I stand by my decision. We can't allow employees to use personal circumstances as a shield against accountability." No one responded. Patricia looked around the table. "Why is she here? This is a board meeting. She doesn't have clearance for." "Ms. Holbrook." Marcus's voice was carefully neutral. "I think there's been a misunderstanding about the situation." "What misunderstanding?" "She submitted a resignation citing mental health issues and her mother's death. I responded according to company policy. Zero tolerance for manipulation." "That's not company policy," someone said quietly. "I think it was Rachel Torres, the CFO. That's never been company policy." Patricia's jaw tightened. "It should be." "Ms. Holbrook." Marcus again. "Do you know who Linda Huang was?" Patricia's expression flickered with impatience. "Of course. The founder. She passed away recently. Tragic, certainly, but... Do you know who inherited her shares?" Silence. Patricia's eyes moved to me. For the first time, really looked at me. I saw the moment understanding began to dawn. Slow, creeping, like water seeping under a door. "No," she said. "That's not, she's a data analyst. She works in Section 12. My name is Jennifer Whalen Chen," I said. My voice came out steadier than I expected. "Linda Huang was my mother. As of 9 days ago, I hold 62% controlling interest in Meridian Solutions Group." Patricia's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: confusion, disbelief, horror. And then, finally, something that looked almost like anger, the indignant fury of someone who realizes they've been caught in a trap of their own making. Why didn't you? I didn't tell anyone because I wanted to earn my place here. I wanted to be judged on my work, not my family connections. I leaned forward slightly. And because my mother asked me not to. She wanted to see what kind of company Meridian really was. What kind of people worked here? Who could be trusted? Patricia's mouth opened, closed, opened again. I was doing my job, she finally said. I didn't know. No, I agreed. You didn't know. But here's the thing, Patricia, you responded to someone who told you their mother had died 2 weeks ago, who said they were struggling with the meaning of life, who asked to step away from their work because they were in crisis. And your response was to call them manipulative, deny them any compassion, and fire them publicly to make an example. I paused. Let the words hang in the air. You didn't know who I was. But that shouldn't matter. That's the whole point. You should treat every employee like they might be the owner's daughter. Not because they might be, but because that's what basic human decency looks like. Patricia's hands were trembling slightly. I noticed she gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles white. I was maintaining standards. You were being cruel, I said. And you thought you could get away with it because you thought I was powerless. You thought no one who mattered would ever see. You CC'd your entire senior team on that email because you wanted them to see how tough you were. How ruthless. You wanted them to be afraid of you. No one at the table moved. Well? I sat back. Now they've seen something else. The termination paperwork was processed that afternoon. I didn't attend that part. Didn't need to. Marcus handled it with the quiet efficiency my mother had valued in him, and Patricia Holbrook walked out of the building at 4:47 p.m. carrying a cardboard box of personal effects and a severance package far more generous than she deserved. I learned later that she'd tried to argue. Tried to cite her 5 years of service, her performance reviews, her contributions to streamlining HR operations. She demanded to speak to her lawyer. Threatened to sue for wrongful termination. Marcus, apparently, had simply handed her a printout of the email she'd sent me. This is cause, he'd said. More than enough. But the terms of your separation agreement include a clause about disparagement. I suggest you sign it. She signed it. I also learned, through the quiet whispers that moved through any office like smoke through cracks, about the other things Patricia had done. The employee who'd been denied bereavement leave after a stillbirth. The manager who'd been put on a performance improvement plan for taking FMLA leave to care for his dying father. The assistant who'd been quietly pressured to resign after reporting harassment from a client. Stories people had been afraid to tell while Patricia had power. Stories that came tumbling out now that she didn't. The next few months were hard. I'd like to tell you I recovered quickly. That firing Patricia was cathartic, that it gave me closure, that I emerged from my grief transformed into some kind of confident leader. That's not how it works. My mother was still dead. I still couldn't sleep. The house still felt too big, too quiet, too full of her absence. I'd find myself standing in the kitchen at 3 a.m., staring at the tea cabinet she'd organized by type and origin, unable to remember why I'd gotten up. But I went back to work. Not as a data analyst. That chapter was over. There was no way to stuff the genie back in the bottle, no pretending I was just another employee now. Marcus and I worked out a transition plan. I'd shadow him for 6 months, learn the parts of the business I didn't know, meet the people who made everything run. Your mother wanted this eventually, Marcus told me one afternoon, in his office with the window that looked out over the parking lot. Not yet. She wanted you to have more time. But she was grooming you whether you realized it or not. I didn't realize. No. He almost smiled. She was good at that. The new VP of Human Resources was a woman named Diane Okonkwo, who'd been running HR at a nonprofit in Oakland and had turned down 3 corporate offers because she didn't believe any of them were serious about employee well-being. I believed her when she said it, and I think she believed me when I said we were. Under Diane, Meridian implemented a grief leave policy. 12 weeks, paid, no questions asked. We expanded mental health coverage. We created a confidential support line where people could report concerns without fear of retaliation. Small things. Nothing revolutionary. Just the kind of baseline decency my mother had always insisted on, restored after 3 years of quiet erosion. I ran into Patricia Holbrook once, about 8 months after everything happened. It was at a coffee shop in Mountain View, one of those places with exposed brick and reclaimed wood and baristas who ask about your feelings. I was waiting for a latte, scrolling through emails on my phone, when I heard a voice behind me. Jennifer. I turned. Patricia looked different, thinner. Her hair was longer, less precisely styled than I remembered. She was holding a cup of something with too much whipped cream, and she was staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. We stood there for a moment, neither of us moving. I got a job, she finally said. Smaller company. HR director, not VP. It's fine. It's fine. I didn't know what to say to that. I thought about what you said. She looked down at her cup. At the meeting. About treating every employee like they might be the owner's daughter. I thought about it a lot. Okay. You were right. Her voice was quiet. Not about me being cruel. I still don't think I was cruel. I think I was doing what I thought was necessary, but you were right that I didn't see people. I saw, I don't know, resources. Problems to be managed. The barista called my name. I didn't move. I don't know why I'm telling you this. Patricia's laugh was small, uncomfortable. I guess I wanted you to know that I heard you. For whatever that's worth. I collected my latte. Stood there, holding it, feeling the warmth through the cup. Patricia, I said finally. I hope the new job is good. I mean that. I hope you're learning things. She nodded, still not quite meeting my eyes. I'm trying. I left the coffee shop. Drove back to the office. Sat in my mother's chair, my chair now, though it still didn't feel like mine, and looked out at the valley sprawling below. My phone buzzed. A text from David Park. Board meeting in 20. Don't forget the Henderson proposal. I hadn't forgotten. I never forgot things anymore. I'd become almost compulsive about it, checking and rechecking, making sure nothing slipped through the cracks. Some part of me was still terrified of letting my mother down, even though she was gone. Maybe especially because she was gone. I texted back a thumbs up emoji. Then I opened my laptop and pulled up the Henderson proposal and got back to work. The koi pond needed cleaning. It was a Saturday in late October, almost a year after my mother died, and I was standing in her garden with a net and a bucket, scooping leaves and debris out of the water. The fish swirled around my intrusion, annoyed but not alarmed. They'd known my hands since they were fingerlings. Midnight surfaced briefly, his black scales catching the light. Hey, I said to him. I know. I'm slow. I'm working on it. He disappeared back into the depths, unimpressed. My phone rang. I set down the net and fished it out of my pocket, expecting work, expecting some crisis that required my attention. It was my aunt. My mother's younger sister, who lived in Vancouver and called every few weeks to check on me. Waylon, she said, using the name only family used. How are you? I'm cleaning the pond. Good. I could hear her smile. Your mother would be pleased. I think she'd tell me I'm doing it wrong. Yes. My aunt laughed, the sound bright and warm through the phone. She would say the net angle is inefficient. She would demonstrate. You would do it her way once to make her happy, then go back to your way the moment she left. I sat down on the edge of the pond, my feet dangling close to the water. I miss her. I know, little one. I know. We talked for a while longer, about nothing important. Family gossip. My aunt's garden, which was struggling with some kind of beetle infestation. A cousin's wedding in the spring, which I promised to attend. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time. The sun moved across the sky. The koi continued their endless circuits. Somewhere in the neighborhood, a dog barked, and a child laughed, and a car door slammed. I picked up the net and went back to work. There was still debris in the water. There would always be debris in the water. That was the thing about koi ponds. They required constant maintenance, constant attention, constant care. You couldn't clean them once and walk away. You had to show up, day after day, and do the small work that kept everything alive. My mother had understood that. I was learning. The first anniversary of her death fell on a Thursday. I took the day off. Not because anyone told me to, but because I'd learned, slowly, painfully, that some things were more important than work. That the world wouldn't collapse if I stepped away. That the Henderson accounts and the board meetings and the quarterly projections would still be there on Friday. I drove to the cemetery. It was raining again, which made me laugh despite myself. My mother would have appreciated the symmetry. She'd always had a weakness for narrative structure. For things that tied together neatly. I stood at her grave for a long time. I don't know what I'm doing, I told her. Most days, I'm just guessing. Trying to figure out what you would do, and then doing something close to that. The rain fell. The headstone didn't respond. I fired Patricia Holbrook. You probably would have handled it differently. More gracefully. But I did it, and I think it was right. I think it mattered. A bird landed nearby, pecked at the wet grass, flew away. I'm trying to take care of the company. Take care of the people. The way you did. I swallowed hard. I'm probably not as good at it as you were. But I'm trying. The rain started to ease. Somewhere behind the clouds, the sun was trying to break through. I love you, Mom. My voice cracked on the last word. I wish you were here to tell me I'm doing it wrong. I wish you were here to fix my net angle. I wish. I couldn't finish. I stood there until my shoes were soaked through and my coat was heavy with water. Then I walked back to my car, drove home, and made a cup of tea from her cabinet, oolong. Her favorite. I sat in the kitchen and drank it slowly, watching the rain trace patterns on the window. The company is doing well. That's what the numbers say, anyway. Revenue is up. Employee satisfaction scores have recovered. Turnover is down to pre-Patricia levels. The board is happy. The shareholders are happy. I'm not sure I'd say I'm happy, exactly. That feels like the wrong word. But I'm here, present, working. Living in the world in a way that feels sustainable, most days. David Park got promoted to senior vice president. He pretended to be annoyed about the extra responsibility, but I saw him smile when he thought no one was looking. His daughter's soccer team won some kind of regional championship, and he keeps a picture of the trophy on his desk now. Marcus Webb announced his retirement last month. 5 more years, he says, then he's done. I'll take over fully then, assuming I haven't burned the whole thing down by that point. He says I won't. I'm not so sure. My aunt visits sometimes. She walks through my mother's garden and clucks disapprovingly at my pruning technique, and I let her show me the right way, and then I go back to my way the moment she leaves. Some things don't change. There's a photograph on my desk now. It's from my mother's garden, about 15 years ago. I was home from college for the summer, and we'd spent the afternoon repotting orchids together. In the photo, I'm holding a pot that's far too big for me, soil spilling everywhere, grinning like an idiot. My mother is beside me, her expression somewhere between exasperation and amusement. She looks young in the photograph. Younger than I remember her being, even then. I keep it where I can see it when I'm working late, when the problems feel insurmountable, when I wonder what the hell I'm doing sitting in this chair in this office pretending I know anything about running a company. It helps, somehow. Reminds me that she didn't start out knowing everything either. That she learned it all, one mistake at a time. That the woman who built this empire was once just a woman with $30,000 and a rented office above a dry cleaner. That becoming someone takes time. Last week, I approved a new hire. Entry-level analyst, fresh out of grad school. Her resume was solid but unremarkable. Her interview was nervous but earnest. She reminded me of myself, a little. Or maybe I just wanted to see that. After the meeting, Diane Okonkwo stopped by my office. You know, she said, leaning against the doorframe, that new hire asked about our bereavement policy during her interview. Said she'd heard we were one of the only companies that offered real support. What did you tell her? The truth. Diane smiled. That we give people time to be human. That's it. Nothing revolutionary. Just time. I thought about my mother. About the email Patricia sent. About the cold silence of the Wendy's parking lot, the rain at the cemetery, the koi pond that always needed cleaning. That's enough, I said. Sometimes that's everything. Diane nodded and left. I turned back to my computer, to the endless emails and reports and decisions that piled up every day. The sun was setting outside the window, painting the valley in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere out there, people were going home to their families. Making dinner. Watching TV. Living their small, ordinary lives. I had work to do. But first, I took a moment. Just a moment. To look at the photograph on my desk, at my mother's face, at the orchid pot spilling soil everywhere. Then I got back to work.